我是阿婉，今天是2025年的11月4日。这是一篇《纽约时报》专栏记者托马斯·弗里德曼的一个标题文章：特朗普的对华贸易政策糟透了。那作者的一个总体结论就是说，特朗普其实是像做房地产一样的，就是试图用杠杆在国际关系中达到目的。但是呢，他在地缘政治上只成功了一部分比如说加沙停火，那在乌克兰与中国的问题上是失败的。那失败的原因是在于他缺乏系统的一个战略，只靠喧嚣与即兴操作。那中国方面就是他分析了中国方面的问题，中国的一个现实困境就是，房地产泡沫破裂，那居民负债累累，消费萎缩，政府不扩大社保支出刺激消费，反而加大制造业投资，扩大出口。那这引发西方的担忧，中国过度出口正在削弱全球制造业竞争力。那对中国的一个风险和策略，就是说，习近平在与特朗普的会晤前宣布将进一步强化工业与技术的一个制造，但这种加倍压住制造业的路线被作者称为鲁莽，因为中国已经生产了全球1/3的一个制成品，那若继续扩张的话，会激起全球的反弹。人工智能正在削减全球就业，各国不会容忍中国独占制造业岗位，所以这是第三个。那此外的话，就是作者又继续了分析了一下特朗普的一个错误的做法，就是说特朗普是缺乏战略的一个关税政策。特朗普面对中国是的确有真实解决问题，要解决不公平贸易、政府补贴、产能过剩，但是他实施的关税方式是混乱，既高调又无计划，很随意。缺乏长期秘密谈判与专家评估，就导致说这个其实是很智商的。因为比如说从稀土事件来看，这就是被中国反制的一个典型。中国掌握了69%的一个全球稀土开发，92%的精炼份额，那98%的稀土磁体的制造。所以说，若中国是真的限制出口，将瘫痪美国的制造业。那所以最终特朗普不得不让财政部长求缓，降低关税，推迟制裁，所以就是杠杆被反转了。那关于说美国内部政策的一个自我削弱，就是说加征高税也导致了就是制造成本上升，然后限制高技能的一个移民，然后那个特朗普政府还削减了科研经费，对盟友加税，削弱联盟。那这些措施让美国在与中国的竞争中更难形成合力。所以说，作者也说了，就是说这些结论和警示，就是说特朗普的问题，就是说在正确的问题上用了错误的方法，那没有连贯的战略，只会制造噪音。习近平的问题就是说，虽然暂时占据了杠杆，却以高风险的形式，那可能会引发全球的去中国化。那更广泛的一个警告就是说，美中上世纪70年代开始的是全球和平与繁荣的支柱。那两国如果继续走向脱钩与对抗，将是一场双输的离婚。所以说作者警告，等到失去时，我们才会怀念这段关系。这个分析我觉得确实是很有水平，因为特朗普懂得杠杆，但其实他没有用，不会用。那习近平虽然说是握有杠杆，却 用的有点危险，就是师夷长技以制夷，但是你制了夷就想说我得脱离你了，就是如果像稀土这个事情，有道理的。所以说，就是像现在各国都纷纷建立起自己的一个稀土的比如说供应链啊，或者就是开始关注这方面的一个发展，就是那中国控制的窗口就这么几年，那代价有可能就是更长远的，所以我觉得目标还是要放得很长。那当下两国都是在以短视的方式，就是损害全球的一个长期稳定，所以说，作者还是会呼吁说，美中需要冷静的长期对话，而非喧嚣的贸易战。这个说的极好。之前在评论中也有一些朋友就是讨论到说，怎么定义就是战争啊，怎么定义热战啊？他们就是有说贸易战也是战，然后那一个评论，我觉得有2位网友发起的，我觉得非常有意思，也非常有水平。如果大家感兴趣的话，也可以去看一下。那接下去的话，我会读一下英文原文。如果你还没有关注我，请关注我吧。Trump's China trade policy is a hot mess. As a real estate developer, Donald Trump is deeply familiar with the city keys to success in the industry: location, location, and location. Geopolitics, it turns out, also has city keys to success: leverage, and leverage. But it's not the kind of leverage like the debt that Trump loves to use in real estate. It's geopolitical leverage, the power to impose your will on your adversary. Seen from that point of view, Trump succeeded in bringing about a ceasefire in Gaza because he gained leverage over both Israel and Hamas, and he used it authoritatively. He has failed to bring about a ceasefire in Ukraine because he has refused to use all the leverage he has on Russia's Vladimir Putin, who started the war, and Trump's attempts to employ the leverage of tariffs to reduce China's manufacturing exports to America, more necessary today than ever, has shown only limited gains, largely because the charity way Trump has gone about putting those tariffs into place. Of course, Trump, with his usual bluster, scored his recent meeting with President Xi Jinping of China as a grand slam, a 12 on a scale of 10, as he put it. In fact, at this summit, all Trump did was dig himself out of a hole with China that he himself dug a few months ago. As the Wall Street Journal noted, markets yawned at the deal because it mostly restored the status quo that prevailed in Beijing. So if you are keeping score at home, Trump is betting 1 for Chile or Chile in baseball that can get you into the All-Star game. In the game of nation, it gets you sent down to the major leaguers. Why only 0 point Chile? Let's focus on China. Which is the most important geostrategic, geoeconomy issue for America today. Any analysis of China has to start with the fact that as a result of devastating bursting of China's housing bubble over the last few years, millions of Chinese has lost significant amounts of money and become burdened with debt. Not surprisingly, they are scrambling on spending. I'm old that many of the half-empty restaurants I saw in Beijing and Shanghai when I was that much are even worse off today. In short, the world's second largest economy is having a crash in domestic consumption, as Chinese are also importing even less from abroad. Beijing's response is not to stimulate domestic consumption by giving its people something more than the bare minimums in social security and health care, but instead to find the building of more factories to export goods to the rest of the world. As one of my Thai colleagues converging China, Charles Barkley, reported last week, days before meeting President Trump in South Korea, the Chinese leader Xi Jinping laid out the next stage in the strategy of long-term competition with the United States and the West. The plan makes clear that Beijing wants to double down on industry manufacturing, even as its trading partners worried that China's expanding exports are undercutting their own industries. This is utterly reckless on China's part, as another of my Thai colleagues, Keith Brasher, reported from Beijing last January. China already produced about a third of world's manufactured goods. That is more than the United States, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and Britain combined. So Trump is responding to a real problem, but as he so often does, he is pushing the wrong answer to the right question. To have real leverage, his tariffs must be part of a quiet grand strategy, but Trump's fire-ready strategy has been anything but that. For starters, if you want to move China, you don't do it in a long, haphazard way that is only going to embarrass its leaders and get their backups. You have long, secret negotiations. Second, if you are going to threaten Beijing with economy sanction, you have better known what it can threaten you with. I can't confirm this, but I suspect that Trump started announcing his new tariff on China without ever asking any expert whether China could retaliate in any meaningful way aside from stopping purchase of American soybeans. I assume Trump did not ask this because if he actually knew beforehand that President Xi had an economic weapon that could trump Trump's tariff tenfold, it would have been the height of the foolishness to impose the huge 145% tariff rate on all imports from China that Trump did at one point. That weapon was China's control on 69% of the market share for the mining of the 17 chemical elements known as rare earths, 92% of the share for the refining of those elements, and 98% of rare earth-based magnet manufacturing, according to estimates from Goldman Sachs. Rare earths are used in all sorts of technologies, but rare earth-based magnets are essential for most electric vehicle motors, semiconductors, smartphones, MRI machines, drones, radars, fighter jets, missiles, and offshore wind turbines. Had China gone ahead with its order to curtail rare earth exports in response to Trump's tariff, It could have significantly slowed down to shut down manufacturing all across America and the world. Once he laid the card on the table, Trump's leverage was sharply dismissed. He quickly scrambled to have his Treasury Secretary persuade China to postpone its curbs on rare earths at first for a year by offering to sharply lower U.S. tariffs and postpone some new bans on high-tech exports to Beijing. This was the geo-economy version of Mike Tyson's famous terms that everyone has a plan until he gets punched in the mouth. Finally, I repeat, Trump was right to impose tariffs across the board on Chinese imports in his first term, and also now because China has not been playing fair on trade. It is forcing U.S. companies to compete with China factories heavily subsidized by the government, and that are greatly overproducing manufactured goods for exports. Tariffs that are limited in time can be useful in buying the economy running room for American manufacturers to develop their own homegrown replacement industries. But for that, you need to have a comprehensive strategy, and Trump has done. At a time when American companies are trying to compete with China's advanced manufacturing exports, Trump is actually making it harder for U.S. firms to hire high-skilled workers from abroad. He has imposed tariffs that make the material that go into steel more expensive for our manufacturers. He has stressed that very government-funded research essential for us to compete with China, let alone stay ahead of it. And he has imposed tariffs on virtually all of America's key allies, whose backing we need to create leverage on China through collective action. It's a completely incoherent strategy. All this said, Xi may have leverage today, but he, too, is playing a risky game by going nuclear on trade that is threatening to curtail rare earth exports. Xi has freaked out the rest of the world and stimulated the US and other key economies to begin a crash program to replace these critical Chinese exports. It will take a long time, but the process has begun. More broadly, the rest of the world is simply not going to let China take all the manufacturing jobs, especially as AI starts to cut increasingly into blue-collar and white-collar work. China is cutting a real global backlash. Given how important the US-China relationship has been for sustaining the related great power, peace, and prosperity of the world since the late 1970s, Washington and Beijing need a quiet long-term dialogue, not a noisy long-term trade war in which both sides lose. If we're really heading for a divorce in this relationship, oh my goodness, we will miss it when it's gone. Thanks for listening and hoping your life fully with happiness and joy. Please subscribe me and thank you. Have a good day.